I just started it in the middle of your sentence. All right. Sure. Just introduce yourself, and then we'll go on from there.
My name is Kyle Hurlburt. I am a student pastor at Christ Community Church, where Dawson is a student in my ministry.
All right. We are going to go ahead and get started with the questions. First off, let's ask, what is your history with mission trips?
I went on my first mission trip when I was in 9th grade. And I think I went on a mission trip every summer for my high school year. And I did a few local, in the United States mission trips. And then I started to go internationally to other countries, experience other cultures, experience the evangelical church and other cultures. And then when I was in college, I saved up some money, got some money donated, and I went and lived in China for a summer to help some missionary friends of mine who were full-time missionaries over there. And then I got called into full-time ministry, and I started going on mission trips to just disciple and mentor students. And now I'm a student pastor, and I plan and lead mission trips every year. This coming year, I'll be doing 3 mission trips over the summer of 2017.
Because I'm going on 2 of them. What's the third one you're leading? The first one's Costa Rica. Or the first one's England, and the second one's Costa Rica.
England for upperclassmen in college. Costa Rica for 9th and 10th grade, or students that have been to Costa Rica and they just have a heart for the people there. And then the middle school mission trip, which is, it's been to a few different places, including inner city Atlanta, inner city Charlotte. And this coming year, we're thinking about maybe checking out Baltimore to help a church plant up there that's just beginning.
All right. Well, we're going to get started with the questions based on missiology as a fundamental aspect of Christianity. The first question is, what would be, in your opinion, the most important asset or component to a mission trip?
I would really say training and preparation, because I've been on both types of trips before. I've been on a mission trip where you meet your teammates once for 30 minutes, and the mission trip leader tells you, here, you need a passport, you need a visa, this is how much money you have to raise, these are the dates of the trip, this is what we'll be doing. That whole meeting takes place in about 30 minutes. And then the next time you really get together with those people is when you're meeting in the airport to go. And I've never been on a trip where it was a complete disaster because of that, but I've heard other people that have. And most of all, you've got teammates who go, and they aren't very much of a help because they've not been trained well. You've got team members that are not getting along well because they're building a relationship in a really, really uncomfortable foreign environment, and they have not learned to appreciate each other for their strengths. So they're just making quick judgments as they're in a foreign country. And so it creates infighting within the team, and then it makes them pretty just ineffective as a team to go and accomplish their mission. On the other side of that, I train my mission teams for 6 to 7 months before we actually go. And we will meet for an average of 6 to 7 times for about 3 hours apiece. On top of that, everyone's got homework that they're doing in between those monthly meetings. And so you've got 7 months of training, hours and hours, where we're going over every part of the mission trip aspect, everything about team dynamics and team building, identifying people's strengths so that we can be a really, really effective team, but also identifying cultural things that we can prepare for so that we're not experiencing as much culture shock when we're overseas, teaching people how to fundraise the right way to do it successfully, but also honorably. So all those kinds of things, you're preparing them as much as possible, but one of the biggest things is you're just building a team. And to build a team, you have to get those people together doing things. And so we don't sit and just go over lessons. We actually do team building exercises to identify things ahead of time. So the long answer, back to the short answer, is training and preparation is the key. You have to do it.
And you would say with those mission trips where you meet the leaders of the teammates once, and then you essentially train apart from them, and then you just go on the mission trip. I mean, we both know because you've preached this to the mission teams about how effective a team has to be with themselves. It's not just a group of people wanting to serve going to the same location. It's a people that know how to work together and function as a well-oiled machine. And you've shown that through training and what you've taught to your mission teams.
So yeah, like teaching the team. Okay, we're gonna go serve other people, but to teach them how to serve each other and just practice the love of Christ with each other. It's kind of like the family that, an unhealthy family. They're really polite to strangers and people on the outside of the house, but then when they're alone with just their family in the walls of their home, they're rude to each other. But a healthy family, they treat their family with the same respect that they would treat a stranger. And so for a healthy team is not just serving strangers, they're serving each other. A healthy team is not just loving on strangers with love of Christ and showing respect, but they're doing it with each other because they're a healthy family now.
Moving on to the second question, we've talked about the good and the important. What would you say would be the most destructive thing for a mission?
I would say going with your own plan instead of asking the local missionary or the local pastor or the local organization what actually needs done. There are letters that I've actually heard and read, and we read it as the very first part of our training. I know the guy who received the letter, and the local missionary said, here are all the things that your team did that actually harmed our ministry, because we're there for 1 week, but these missionaries and these pastors are doing the ministry the other 51 weeks out of the year. And so they said stuff like, you guys were saying, I have to do something. And so he said that fence has been painted 4 times this year. And this is all the stuff that's in the letter. And he basically asked the church not to send back teams because they did so many things and they offended their culture so much because they didn't train, that he said you undid 3 years of work that I've built a relationship with these local people. So that's just one really tragic story of when you go as in our case the American team, and you want to do what's in your head, what you want to do, what things that are in your comfort zone, instead of asking the local missionary, the local pastor, what do you need done? What's going to be fruitful for you after we leave? And how can we reach your culture, teach us how to reach you, instead of just make them Americanized? So
we've gone over those letters, and they're such bad letters, and it's especially hard when we're the ignorant Americans, the gringos, as we're called in Costa Rica, and especially when we have that already pre-existing
Stigma.
notion, the stigma of, oh, here come some Americans trying to make everything into America.
Right, and our team has had to work to prove that wrong, almost. So,
and I would say you have done a great job doing that. Which leads us into our third question. What defines a successful mission?
Part of it is being invited back by the local missionaries or the pastor, and that kind of goes with our last question. If they really, really are asking you to come back, then that means that you are of help to them, and it's worth all the extra time and effort that they have to put into planning those things. The week that you're there, they're working long hours because they're working with you, and we've gotten to this point with our partners in Costa Rica, where the head missionary spends the entire summer back in the United States, visiting family, but also raising support for the ministry. And last year and this coming summer, he flies back just the week that our team is there, because he loves our team so much, because we're so well prepared, and our students have a great heart, and we're very fruitful in the work that we do, that he's willing to fly and spend his own frequent flyer miles to come back just for our team, because we've built this great, healthy mission partnership with them. And so, yeah, like, a successful trip means you've been invited back, which means you've done well, and you're actually doing good instead of just feeling good about what you're doing.
There's definitely that distinction there, and I would go as far to say, even if one person gets saved by Christ, if it costs $10,000 a person, I would say it's definitely worth it.
And in our case, we've helped plant a church, and every year we go back, we see this church grow a little bit more. And so when we go there, we do things just to get locals attached to that church, so that they're not really only coming around when the Americans come around once a year. We're plugging them into local pastors, local people that can invest in them and teach them the Bible, so that we're not the heroes, the locals are. So,
yeah, there's definitely that difference between going to the needy and helping the needy come to someone who's always there.
Right.
And given that can be more difficult than going out and handing out sandwiches, which leads us into our final question for the interview. What would you say is the hardest part about the mission process, including maybe fundraising, the processes needed to come up with the mission, essentially, and training?
Yeah, and it's funny because I've done student mission trips with mostly minors, and then I've done mission trips that are just blended and they've got all generations. And this is the one thing that you'd be surprised is the same across the board, is getting your team to prepare, getting them to not procrastinate. And so applying for their passports on time, sending out their support letters, writing their support letter in the first place. Just doing, like, especially with raising support, our trips are not cheap. We have to pay for a lot of things, and that can seem like a really big number. We teach people how to raise that support and get people to donate toward the mission. But a lot of people are so uncomfortable about asking for money that it just almost chokes them, and they stall and they don't do it because they're scared. But really, that procrastination is what causes more stress down the road. And then we've got people that, if they don't raise enough money, then they're paying for it out of their pocket, or they just can't go. So procrastination, you've got 6 or 7 months of training, and you think that's a long time. But Dawson, it flies by.
It's not.
It flies by.
Oh, jeez.
So, yeah, I would say procrastination, getting your team to follow a process, schedule things out, and just be diligent ahead of time, so that the month or two leading up to the actual trip, they're not stressed out.
Anything you would like to add on?
I think, in the entire theme of your senior project, how missiology, is an essential part of the Christian faith. That's basically what you're saying. I would say if we as Christians are not, when we use the term on mission, it's a trendy catchphrase for saying we're actually sharing the good news of Jesus Christ with other people. And if we're not doing that, then we're not Christians. Christ did that, and then he instructed all of his followers to do that. And so Jesus said, "Be my follower." And what do followers do? They follow. So if you're not doing what Jesus tells you to do, then you're not a follower of Jesus. And so to be a Christian who's not on mission means that you're probably not a Christian. But the joy that a Christian finds in actually being on mission, it's similar to when you find a really good restaurant. You don't keep it to yourself. You tell everyone about it because you love that restaurant. You want to see its success, but you also don't want to keep a good thing to yourself. It's the same thing with Christ.
All right, that's awesome. Some hard-hitting news, but news that absolutely has to be shared. Thank you for spending about 15 minutes here listening to my loudmouth ask you questions with the baby. All right, it's been a pleasure.